What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a good one. It's a good one. Pretty angry right now. I mean, it's been about 2 weeks since the launch of FIFA 21, and the Switch version is just, I mean, the game in general is a mess, but the Switch version in particular is a real slap in the face for Switch owners, for Nintendo. I just not pleased, because literally what they did was copy and paste last year's experience into this new package and just changed out kits, made little updates like that, roster updates, and it's a kind of prominent issue with the Switch when it comes to ports of other games. You get ports where they put a lot of love, compassion into making this project look as good as it possibly can on the Nintendo Switch, and then you have people like EA that will literally port games as poorly as possible. I don't even know what the rationale is behind this approach, because on the Nintendo Switch they stand to make a whole lot of money because of that large fan base. You get games like Outworlds, which was ported almost, if not more than a year ago, but is now receiving a patch that irons out a lot of those issues, which I really appreciate. And now that that's happening, I'm actually considering getting Outworlds on the Switch because I want a Fallout 3-like experience on a handheld. But then on another side of the spectrum, you've got developers that say they're going to bring games to the Switch, particular games, like Ubisoft with Steep, like Bethesda with Doom Eternal. I mean, we don't know after that purchase that Microsoft made what's going to happen there. But my point being is that there's a lot of things in different facets of the Switch's ecosystem that go wrong, whether it be with the ports or they feel they can't put a game on the system even though they try. I mean, in the case of Steep, Nintendo even got on board for a while there to see if they could help in the process of making the game happen on the Switch. And I appreciate that, but then we heard nothing more of it. And I've got to say, I've got to turn this around to Nintendo. As skeezy and despicable as that is, what EA is doing. Because keep in mind, they're selling this game for a full retail price, almost $50. That's ridiculous. When it's the same game as last year, and last year's game also was not a great port. It really was, there was no effort put into it. So I look at companies like EA, I look at companies like Ubisoft, and I mean, you could just go off on a list of companies that make games for the Switch, or could make more games for the Switch, like Capcom. Why don't these companies, considering what the Switch has to offer, considering what its capabilities are, why wouldn't you have a team of people within your company that specifically work on attaining assets that will work for the Switch version? Because another big problem is a game comes out for the PlayStation and the Xbox, and they say it's coming out for the Switch, and then we don't get it for another 6 months or more. Sometimes it's a little less than that, but generally speaking, these games get delayed and delayed and delayed, and it's if you're a Switch-only user, which I'm not, I have a PlayStation 4, I feel for those people that are only on Nintendo Switch and expect a little bit more. It's really sad. Games like Tony Hawk Pro Skater is something I was really hoping for to come over to the Switch. Games like Skater XL was supposed to come to the Switch. It's still supposed to come to the Switch, but when, we don't know. Especially in the case of Skater XL, why aren't these assets, why aren't these things being worked out before launch, so that even if there is a delay on the Switch release, it's no more than a couple weeks. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense, especially when it comes to bigger companies. I look at some of the releases that have come out on all three platforms, and the Switch version, in some of these games' cases, The Switch version looks worse, and it doesn't necessarily have to. Like, there are certain side scrollers that I've played that are two-dimensional indie games that run at lesser frame rates than the other platforms, and they're not even running at 60 frames per second on the other platforms. They're running at 30 frames. Like, I don't get that disjointed, like, just lack of care when putting games on the Switch. You know, speaking about Tony Hawk, I look at the fact that Skate 4 is being rumored, and EA has even talked about it. In my mind, there's no chance of that actually coming to the Switch, as much as I want it. You know, I'll obviously get it on my PlayStation 5 or whatever, but I mean, we still don't know how powerful this new Nintendo Switch is going to be, but I have to turn the argument to Nintendo. As much as I love Nintendo, as much as you guys know I like to stand up for Nintendo, I look at a situation like FIFA 21 and I'm just perplexed. Let them do what they're gonna do, or don't. I mean, they should be accountable for what they've done, because that is stealing, that is cheating people out of money, what they've done. I think it's actually the most despicable thing that has happened on the Nintendo Switch when it comes to releasing a game thus far. Aside from games like Mortal Kombat 11 literally making you download the whole game. Even though you bought the physical copy, you're downloading the whole game. Like, that's shabby. That's shabby. And speaking about Mortal Kombat 11, what the hell, guys? You could have gone into some extra development on that game so that it didn't look like nice poop. I'm not trying to be mean here. Like, the game runs at 60, it looks good for the most part, but that hair, bro. You guys need to fix that. I mean, like, stat. It looks like garbage. I don't even mind the fact that some levels just don't have all the features, like waves crashing up. I mean, for the most part, most of the levels look pretty good, but some of them have definite effects taken out, which, okay, you gotta dial back. That's cool. But that hair, get on it. That is unacceptable. But like I was saying, like, you gotta turn this argument to Nintendo, because you look at the games that Nintendo offers. In the case of extreme sports like Tony Hawk, you've got Wave Race, you've got 1080, you've got Excite Bike. All games that would cater to a big enough crowd on the Nintendo Switch that it could easily sell 10 million plus copies. I mean, in my personal opinion, I believe that. Because the beautiful thing, and this even goes into the Mario sports games, the beautiful thing about the way Nintendo makes their sports games is that they respect the sport enough to where you get the feeling that you're actually partaking in the sport, whilst also bringing some of that Nintendo arcadey goodness to the table. Or at least in the past, they were always a beautiful cross between simulation and arcade. They always skirted that line so beautifully. So to see them come out with a new 1080, you know, and I understand that 1080 and Wave Race on the GameCube didn't do as well, but that's because you guys forgot some very key things that made the original so great. Not so much in Wave Race's case. I mean, there are definite things that I would scrap and change out to create a tighter experience, something that's more visceral, something that makes you just feel like you're on the water. There was a lot of elements about Wave Race that at the time, Blue Storm was nice, but when I look in retrospect, Wave Race 64 holds up better and is more fun and is actually in some ways more impressive, even though, yes, the graphics on Blue Storm are technically better. There's just something when you consider the time periods that those games came out, the consoles that they came out for, what was done on the N64 was vastly more impressive. And then you move over to something like 1080. 1080 Avalanche had some very, very nice aspects to it. Things like the visual style, very cool. Things like the avalanche system, really cool. But everything else about that game completely forgot what 1080 was about. I will definitely be breaking each one of these games down because they are 3 of my favorites. Excite Bike only had that one game, and then they moved on to Excite Truck, which amazing games, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Excite Bots was a little weird, but still fun, but Excite Truck was amazing, but it was completely different than Excite Bike. Excite Bike, I've only just recently gotten into over maybe the last 3 years, and whilst it is an older game, it still impresses me on such a unique level. For a game that looks like an N64 game, I still have more fun with it than modern day motocross games. So, I don't know, that's saying something, and I can say that about each one of these games. There isn't a water sports game that makes me feel the way Wave Race does. There isn't a snowboarding game that feels as in depth when it comes to the relationship between the player, the board, and the surfaces you land on. There's just something so much more technical about that game than any other snowboarding game on the market, in my opinion. And through 3 videos that I hope to do in the near future, I'd like to break down why each one of these games is still impressive and should be respected today, and why Nintendo needs to look back at those 3 games and start thinking about how to bring them to today's standard when it comes to visuals, when it comes to scope and scale of the game. Like, there's just so much potential there. Now, moving over to the Mario sports games. Oh my god. I mean, we got Mario Tennis Aces on the Nintendo Switch, and albeit there were some issues, I mean, now we've got a large roster of characters, we've got a lot of levels. Well, see, that's one of the problems there. We have nice levels, but there just aren't enough, and they're not themed enough. There are definitely shortcomings to this game, but it checked a lot of boxes that I was looking for. It has insanely beautiful visuals. It has a really cool story mode, which I enjoyed as a kind of mashup of the mini games, the tutorial, getting you used to how the game plays. The online is great, but there are definitely things that could be done better, a lot better with these games. But to see the kind of quality that went into that game, and the hope that one day an even greater quality will hit the series, not taking any steps backwards, but only moving forwards, I would like to see games like Mario Strikers, games like Mario Sluggers. Like, you guys have the potential to make excellent sports games, but then you take your time, you don't come out with them regularly enough, you skip generations, and you get lazy with it sometimes. Like that, whoever's idea it was to make that Mario sports mix on the Wii, I'm sorry, dude. I'm not saying that you should be fired, but that was an awful idea. Because what you ended up doing was taking 3 sports that could have been main games, that could have been really well fleshed out games. You could have taken those opportunities to make these incredible experiences, but you just crammed them into one experience and you kind of gave it a Mario Party feel. There was no technicality to it. It didn't feel really like you went into much thought about it or the sport that the games belonged to. It just felt like a missed opportunity. So you need to scrap that idea. Don't ever do that again. And think about how you guys, because the beautiful thing about Mario sports games, and like I said with 1080, Wave Race, and Excite Bike, is that you take a sport, albeit exciting or not, and you make it even more fun and approachable for people to enjoy in the comfort of their living room. That's a very special thing. When I look at a game like Mario Tennis, the first time I played it when I was a kid, didn't know if I was going to enjoy it all that much, but it made me fall in love with tennis games. Mario Golf, again, the only reason I bought it was because the Mario brand was in it, and I trusted the fact that they were going to respect the sport, but also bring something to the table that would entice me to enjoy. Games like Tiger Woods, they're fun, but at the same time, I can't stay in it for too long. The beauty about Mario Golf, especially Mario Golf on the GameCube, oh my god, that game was gorgeous. It had some of the best visuals of any Mario sports games, but it also had a technical nature to it that allowed it to be on the same level as a game like Tiger Woods without being too technical, you know? So, like I say, I've got to turn this to Nintendo and be like, guys, with all the utilities, all the games that you have under your belt, why are you making us put up with what EA has done here? Because if you had Mario Strikers on the Switch, which, by the way, Mario Strikers on the Wii, amazing game, you'll see in this video, but the motion controls, not needed. The original Mario Strikers was so incredible that it's actually Ronaldo's favorite soccer game. That is saying something. Because not only was it technical, but it brought that fun, inviting Mario vibe. You guys need to start revisiting these ideas and giving them the time and love, respect that they deserve when it comes to developing them. Go back, look at those original experiences, look at the best experiences that you've created, and ask yourself, how do we replicate this and take it to the next level? Because it's those core mechanics that those original games brought to the table. Games like 1080 Wave Race, Excite Bike, Mario Tennis, all of that. It's that realism coupled with that arcade and ease of access. I can't stress it enough that the potential behind these franchises is limitless if you have the right people behind them. So to think about a studio or two that would focus on these kind of experiences, that would be their forte. All you would have to do is get a bunch of game designers that enjoy sports or enjoy, skiing and snowboarding and that kind of stuff. And you've got a team that would put that love into the experience to replicate that real life experience in a video game. But I am tired of seeing these developers just releasing crappy games or crappy versions of their games on the Switch. And I'm also tired of hoping that certain games are going to make it to the Switch and they either never do or end up coming out late and not a great port. We've got this, guys. You guys have it. You have the magic in you. So let's get it done. Honestly, I don't know, guys, if I'm ever going to work for Nintendo. I mean, that is the hope. That is the dream. But if it never happens, it never happens. But I tell you what, if I ever do work for them, I got those ideas that they so need to make better games, to make older games step out of the shadows and come back with force. I thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. It helps the video immensely, and it would just make me happy inside. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing if you enjoyed the content. Thanks again for helping me hit 300 subscribers. And until next time, thanks for playing.